As he emerged from the Alameda County Courthouse, Newton was greeted by hundreds of supporters who had been waiting for hours for a glimpse of the man who had been a rallying cry for them for 33 months.
He is a sort of gangster, you know, because this is a gangster story, but a gangster with a difference because this is a gangster with a conscience.
A leader for self-defense and a firm believer in equality, Huey P. Newton altered the lives of African Americans worldwide. Misunderstood for almost 49 years, his legacy not only envelops his campaign against police brutality, but it also exhibits his passion for the improvement of the lives of the Black community by giving minorities a voice in the media and creating over 40 survival programs.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom.
Despite the Emancipation Proclamation granting freedom for slaves, the 14th Amendment granting equal protection under the law, and the 15th Amendment allowing them to vote, African Americans were not exempt from de facto discrimination. The 3,446 lynchings of African Americans that occurred in the United States from 1882 to 1963 were typically done without punishment due to all-white juries. African Americans not only faced brutal deaths, but also faced severe economic, educational, and societal discrimination. John F. Kennedy said that African Americans born in the year of 1963 have about one-half as much chance of completing high school as a white man, one-third as much chance of becoming a professional man, twice as much chance of becoming unemployed, a life expectancy which is 7 years shorter, and the prospects of earning only half as much. Due to the past pattern of racial injustices and continued discrimination, in the face of concerted efforts to bring about change through Martin Luther King Jr. and other non-violent civil rights leaders, tensions between white and black communities in the 1960s were high. A civil rights leader named Malcolm X was not seeing the change he wanted to see through being peaceful and regarded violence as the only answer. He was assassinated in 1965, but some of his ideas stayed alive through Huey Percy Newton, a man who decided it was his turn to try and make a change. Huey P. Newton was born on February 17, 1942 in Monroe, Louisiana. A year later, he and his family moved to Oakland, California. At the time, only 3% of the police department was African American, when blacks made up 40% of the population. Some police officers were required to only arrest black men.
Many of the police departments are not African Americans, and other minorities are not represented to their percentage in the local population.
As Newton went through school, his teachers and the school administration singled him out. His school favored the white students over the blacks. Due to his poor education throughout school, he graduated illiterate in 1959. Despite his resentment towards the school system, Newton still believed education was important, and he taught himself how to read. He attended Merritt College. There, he met Bobby Seale in 1961. Both men were involved in the college's African American Association and had similar beliefs about racial hatred. With a combination of strong beliefs and a desire for change, they formed the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense on October 15, 1966. The Black Panthers were a civil rights organization that encouraged people to stand up and defend themselves.
Black Panther Party emerged out of Oakland in the late 1960s, and they articulated a very different kind of politics than the mainstream civil rights movement was at the time.
Why would he want to stimulate this kind of organization? What is he sees what he'd seen in his life, people being subjected to unfair, racist domination by the state, and that's wrong, and he knew it was wrong.
This is the thing that we're fighting against. We're fighting against racism, we're fighting against oppression of all kinds, and we're fighting against ignorance.
Newton was the Minister of Defense and the official leader of the party.
I was really troubled by that. He also said there was a disproportionate number of black men on black families on welfare, and a disproportionate number of black men who were in jail. Those are the things that bothered him the most. And if you read his 10 points, he addressed some of those things in his 10 points.
The 10-point program was designed to address the societal inequalities plaguing blacks to create a better life for African Americans. The Black Panthers started opening offices in 1967. By 1970, they had opened offices in 68 cities. The Black Panthers carried guns wherever they went to ensure their safety, and police didn't like this. In response to these actions, the Mulford Act was being passed, which repealed their right of public carrying of loaded firearms. Newton and the other Black Panthers went to the Capitol to protest the act. This commenced the spread of the party nationwide. At the end of 1967, the Black Panther Party had only 31 members, but by 1969 the number of members had risen up to over 10,000. Many supported Newton's movement, and this was shown on October 28, 1967. There was a gun battle between police officers and Newton. Newton was shot and critically injured while also being arrested for the death of an officer, John Frey.
Due process of law has become a joke. We say that Huey Newton is completely innocent.
Newton's arrest provided the spark that lit a wildfire, which we now call the Black Power movement. At the time of Newton's arrest, America was in the middle of the Vietnam War. The Black Panthers did not support the war because they were not only against African American discrimination, but also brutality towards any other race.
Part of the Black Panther movement was forcing the civil rights movement and the U.S. federal government to think about their role as far as violence in other nations.
The Black Panthers gained thousands of supporters from anti-war protesters. On February 17, 1968, Free Huey rallies were held, beginning at the Oakland Auditorium. The day Newton's case opened, over 6,000 protesters gathered outside the Alameda Courthouse. Newton was sentenced to 2 to 15 years in prison, but he encouraged the party to continue to work hard and improve the community.
You can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution.
Shortly after, the Black Panthers established the Free Breakfast for Children program in Oakland, California, where they would feed hundreds of children before school. At the end of 1969, Newton's conviction was overturned on appeal. He returned to the Black Panther Party and continued to make an astounding change in the colored society by growing the Breakfast for Children program and beginning to open up free health clinics, free clothing and shoe donations, and also education programs.
We were then given accommodations by the governor, Jerry Brown, for our work with our breakfast programs. And also we had a school that was rated the number 2 school in the state of California.
Many organizations all over the country were being created inspired by the Black Panthers, including the Gray Panthers, the Yellow Peril, and the Red Guard. The Black Panthers also had global support from over 15 countries. The party's activity began to wane in 1975 as the changes they wanted started to occur. Newton was still widely known around the community when a member of the rival Black Guerrilla Party, Tyrone Robinson, shot and killed him on August 22, 1989.
The stalwart legacy of the Black Panther Party continues as strong as ever, which is why the corporate stream media, even in the 21st century, continues in its attempts to distort and disfigure its legacy.
During Newton's leadership of the Black Panthers, the FBI labeled him as enemy number 1. This label was in stark contrast to the social program Newton's leadership established. By the end of 1969, 10,000 children were being fed breakfast by the Black Panther Party before they went to school. By 1975, the National School Breakfast Program that is still in use today was launched inspired by the Breakfast for Children program. Leaders such as Newton have put police brutality under heavier scrutiny. When a police officer kills an African American, the news makes headlines nationwide, like the cases in Ferguson, South Carolina, and Baltimore. Newton has inspired groups that continue to be created to this day. After the many cases of police brutality aimed towards African Americans, the Huey P. Newton Gun Club was formed in Dallas, Texas. Huey P. Newton led an organization that has improved lives nationwide. His revolutionary ideas and passion for equality has left a legacy that is still very alive in today's society and will continue to affect African Americans for years to come.
I am amazed by the miracles which Huey performed for our people. I know that Huey would not consider it a miracle. It is all just common sense to him. But it is the common sense of an uncommon man, the common sense of a genius.